They laughed when she stepped off the armored transport. "Just a girl?" someone muttered over the radio, the words crackling through cold wind and gunpowder residue. Nobody asked her name. Nobody wanted her on the final defensive line. But when bullets started raining down, when the defensive perimeter shook, and seasoned shooters fell one by one, only one rifle remained silent, waiting. And then, at the moment the entire unit prepared to break, that girl pulled the trigger. The convoy rolled into Forward Operating Base Sentinel at 0430 hours, 3 days before the scheduled withdrawal. Captain Derek Lawson stood at the command post, watching dust billow from beneath the transport wheels as they ground to a halt. The valley stretched below them, a narrow corridor flanked by ridgelines that had swallowed 2 reconnaissance teams in the past month. "That's our reinforcement?" Sergeant Travis Bennett squinted at the manifest on his tablet. "We requested a sniper team. They sent us one." The rear hatch dropped. 7 soldiers emerged, their boots hitting gravel in synchronized thuds. 6 men in their 30s and 40s, weathered faces and confident strides. Then her. She couldn't have been more than 25. Medium height, lean build, carrying her rifle case with both hands instead of slinging it over her shoulder like the others. Her uniform was pristine in a way that screamed no field time. Her hair, regulation length but tied back, caught the first rays of dawn. "You've got to be kidding me." Bennett's voice carried farther than he intended. She looked up once, briefly, her gray eyes scanning the perimeter before returning to her equipment. No reaction, no defensive posture, just absolute focus on checking her gear. Lieutenant Marcus Holloway, the base's senior marksman, approached with his arms crossed. "Which one of you is Corporal Ellis?" "That would be me, sir." Her voice was steady, unremarkable. No attempt to sound tougher or softer than she was. "Your file says you qualified expert at the sniper course." Holloway's tone made it clear what he thought of that. "Fort Benning graduation doesn't mean much out here." "No, sir, it doesn't." The answer caught him off guard. Most rookies would have puffed up, tried to prove themselves with words. She just stood there, waiting for actual instructions. Captain Lawson joined them, scanning the new arrival with visible disappointment. "We're holding a defensive position for 72 hours, while the main force completes withdrawal through the southern pass. Every shooter counts. You'll be assigned to Sector 4 with Sergeant Chen's team." Sector 4. Everyone knew what that meant, the quietest position, furthest from the expected contact zones, where they put personnel they didn't trust with anything critical. "Understood, sir." As she gathered her equipment, voices drifted from the nearby sandbag wall. "They're scraping the bottom of the barrel now. Diversity quota made it all the way out here. Give her the radio watch. At least she can't screw that up." Corporal Rachel Ellis heard every word. She'd heard variations of them for 3 years since the day she first showed up at sniper school, since the day she outshot half her class and they attributed it to luck, since the day her first kill was dismissed as beginner's fortune. She'd stopped trying to change minds with words around the same time she'd stopped reacting to the doubt in people's eyes. Her rifle case clicked open. Inside, the M110 semi-automatic sniper system lay in custom foam, every surface meticulously maintained. She'd bought the cleaning kit with her own money, practiced breathing techniques until they became as natural as walking, studied ballistics manuals while others played cards in the barracks. Not because she wanted to prove anything, because she refused to be the reason someone died. Sergeant Bobby Chen appeared beside her, a stocky man in his 40s with a scar running through his left eyebrow. "You're with me. Sector 4 is on the western ridge. Light duty, mostly observation. Try not to touch anything." "Yes, Sergeant." He walked away without another word, and she followed, her boots finding purchase on the rocky incline. Behind her, she heard Bennett mutter to Holloway, 72 hours. Just keep her out of the way and we'll be fine." Rachel said nothing. She'd been underestimated before. It usually didn't end well for the enemy. Sector 4 overlooked a dried riverbed 200 meters below, bordered by scattered boulders and dead vegetation. To the north, Sectors 1 through 3 formed the main defensive arc where Lawson had positioned his most experienced shooters, machine gun nests. Mortar teams. The works. Sector 4 had Rachel, Sergeant Chen, and 2 riflemen. Private First Class Danny Kowalski, a baby-faced 20-year-old from Wisconsin, and Specialist Jordan Hayes, a quiet veteran who spoke maybe 10 words per hour. Chen pointed to a depression between two rock formations. "Set up there. You've got clear sight lines down the riverbed and across to the eastern slope. Anything moves, you call it in before you even think about shooting. Clear?" "Clear, Sergeant." She moved into position, methodically assembling her shooting platform, sandbag rest, range cards, backup ammunition within arm's reach. Her movements were efficient, practiced, no wasted motion. Kowalski watched from his fighting position 10 meters away. "You really a sniper?" "That's what my orders say." "It's just... you seem young." "I'm 23. "Yeah, but..." He trailed off, realizing how the sentence would end. Hayes spoke up, his voice gravelly. "She qualified or she wouldn't be here. Leave it alone." Rachel sketched her range card in silence, marking distances to key terrain features. The riverbed curved northeast at 180 meters, a cluster of rocks at 310 meters, the treeline edge at 475 meters. She memorized each measurement, each potential firing lane. The tactical briefing had been clear. Enemy forces were massing for a final push before the withdrawal completed. Intelligence estimated 200 combatants, possibly more. They'd probe for weaknesses first, then commit to a full assault on whichever sector looked most vulnerable. Rachel studied the terrain with different eyes than her companions. They saw obstacles and cover. She saw geometry angles of fire, dead zones, positions that looked safe but weren't, and she saw the problem. "Sergeant Chen?" He looked up from his radio check, irritated at being interrupted. "What?" "That outcropping at 280 meters, eastern slope. Someone with a technical weapon could set up there and hit sectors 2 and 3 from a flanking position." Chen squinted at the rocks, she indicated. "That's outside our sector." "Yes, Sergeant, but Sector 3's position doesn't have line of sight to it. The angle's wrong." "Then it's not our problem." "Sergeant, if they put a machine gun there..." "Ellis," his voice hardened. "I didn't ask for tactical analysis. I asked you to watch your assigned sector. Do that." She wanted to press the issue. The outcropping was a textbook support by fire position, the kind of spot any competent enemy would identify immediately. But pressing wouldn't change his mind, it would only confirm his belief that she was overstepping. "Yes, Sergeant." As the sun climbed higher, painting the valley in harsh shadows, Rachel noticed something else. Dust patterns on the far ridge, subtle disturbances in vegetation near the dried riverbed, the way certain rocks had been recently moved. Someone had scouted this position within the past 48 hours. She marked it in her notebook, saying nothing. By noon, the temperature hit 98 degrees. Kowalski complained constantly. Hayes dozed in brief intervals. Chen rotated between their positions, maintaining watch but clearly not expecting contact in this sector. Rachel stayed perfectly still, her eye periodically returning to her scope, cataloging every change in the landscape. At 1,420 hours, she spotted movement at 520 meters, just a flash fabric, maybe, or a piece of equipment catching sunlight. "Possible contact. Far tree line," she reported quietly. Chen looked through his binoculars. "I don't see anything." "May." It was brief. "Edge of the bay." "Ellis, the heat plays tricks. Stay focused." But it hadn't been a trick. She'd seen the shape, the way it moved. Human movement, not animal. They were being observed. And nobody believed her. The attack came at 0315 5 hours, 3 hours before dawn. No warning, no probing fire, just sudden, overwhelming violence. Explosions ripped through Sector 2, the eastern machine gun nest disappearing in a fireball. Tracer rounds sliced through darkness like laser shows, converging on defensive positions with terrifying accuracy. "Contact. Contact. All sectors, we are under attack." Captain Lawson's voice erupted over the radio, already strained. Rachel rolled into her firing position, eyes pressed to her scope. Her world narrowed to the circle of green-tinted night vision, scanning for targets in the chaos below. Muzzle flashes erupted from the riverbed, from the eastern slope, from positions that shouldn't have had clear lines of fire, but somehow did. They'd mapped the entire defensive position, every blind spot, every weakness. Sector 4. What do you see? Chen barked. Multiple shooters in the riverbed. 180 to 250 meters. At least 15. They're advancing under covering fire from... Can you engage? Rachel's crosshairs settled on a figure directing others, clearly a team leader coordinating the assault. Easy shot. 220 meters. Minimal wind. She'd made harder shots in training 100 times. I have a target. Fire team leader. 220 meters. Negative. Do not fire. Sector 4 is designated observation only. You'll give away your position. Her finger rested on the trigger guard, not the trigger itself. Every instinct screamed at her to take the shot. The enemy leader was organizing a flanking maneuver that would roll up Sector 3 within minutes. Sergeant, they're moving on Sector 3. I said negative. That's an order. She watched through her scope as the enemy fire team leader directed his forces with hand signals. Professional, experienced, exactly the kind of target that needed to be eliminated first. But she held fire. Sectors 1 and 3 returned fire, but their angles were wrong. The enemy had positioned themselves perfectly, using terrain that Rachel had flagged 12 hours earlier, including the outcropping. A technical vehicle, a pickup truck with a mounted machine gun, roared up the eastern slope and settled into position at exactly 280 meters. The gunner swung his weapon towards Sector 3's exposed flank. Technical on the eastern outcropping. Rachel transmitted, Sector 3, you have incoming fire from your 4 o'clock. The warning came seconds too late. The machine gun opened up, raking Sector 3's position. Sandbags exploded. Return, fire ceased. 3 is hit. 3 is hit, someone screamed over the radio. Lieutenant Holloway's voice cut through the chaos. 2, shift fire to that technical, suppress that gun. But Sector 2 was already pinned down, taking fire from the riverbed forces. They couldn't maneuver without exposing themselves. The technical's gunner adjusted his aim, preparing for another burst. Rachel's crosshairs centered on his chest. 280 meters. Uphill angle, roughly 15 degrees. Slight crosswind from the west. Her breathing slowed automatically, her heart rate dropping as training overrode fear. Ellis, I swear to God, if you fire, Chen started. She watched Sector 3's position taking sustained fire, watched soldiers scrambling for cover, watched the tactical situation deteriorating by the second. The technical's gunner was reloading. 5 seconds before he'd open fire again. 4 seconds before 3 men died. 3 seconds before their defensive line collapsed. 2 seconds before the decision point passed forever. Ellis, Chen shouted. 1 second. Rachel held her fire, not because Chen ordered it, not because she doubted the shot, but because she understood something he didn't. If she fired now and missed, she'd have revealed their position for nothing. If she fired now and hit, Chen would still find a way to blame her for disobeying orders. She needed to wait for the moment when everyone would understand her shot wasn't insubordination. It was survival. The machine gun on the technical roared again. This time it found its mark. Man down in 3, corpseman. The radio dissolved into overlapping transmissions, damage reports, ammunition counts, desperate calls for supporting fire that wasn't coming. The enemy had planned this perfectly, hitting them during the skeleton crew of the night watch before reinforcements from the rear positions could deploy. Another explosion, this one in Sector 1, the mortar team. 1 is compromised. We're falling back to secondary positions. Captain Lawson's voice cut through, tight with controlled panic. All sectors, hold your positions. If we lose the high ground, they'll cut us off from the evacuation route. Hold your ground. But holding ground required ammunition, and ammunition required resupply, and resupply required people who were currently being shredded by enemy fire. Rachel's scope tracked the battlefield, cataloging disaster after disaster. The enemy wasn't just attacking, they were systematically dismantling the defense. Fire team by fire team, position by position. Sergeant Chen pressed his back against the rock wall, his face pale in the moonlight. Where the hell did they come from? The positions I marked, Rachel said quietly. They've been scouting us for days. He didn't respond. Maybe he was too overwhelmed to process it. Maybe he just didn't want to admit she'd been right. Kowalski was firing short bursts down into the riverbed, more to feel like he was doing something than out of any tactical necessity. Hayes remained calm, selecting ammunition, conserving ammunition. Sector 4, this is Lawson. We need eyes on that technical. Can you get an angle? Chen grabbed the radio. Negative, sir. We don't have the equipment to engage. I can take the shot, Rachel said. Ellis, I already told you. Sergeant, they're killing us. That technical will wipe out 3 completely in the next 2 minutes. After that, it'll traverse to 2, then 1. We'll lose the entire northern perimeter. You're not authorized. Then authorize me. The explosion that interrupted their argument came from Sector 3. Direct hit. The screaming that followed made Rachel's jaw clench. Chen stared at her, his hand trembling on the radio. 23 years in the army, and for the first time in his career, he had no idea what to do. Can you make that shot? His voice was barely above a whisper. If you miss, I won't. He held her gaze for 3 seconds that felt like hours. Then he lifted the radio. Lawson, Sector 4. We have a shooter who thinks she can hit that technical. A pause. Then, she? Corporal Ellis, sir. The new sniper. Another pause. Longer this time. In the background, Rachel could hear gunfire over Lawson's open mic. Permission granted. Take the shot. Rachel settled into her position, her world narrowing to the scope, the target, the mathematics of trajectory and wind. She'd done this 1,000 times in training, but training didn't have bullets snapping overhead. Training didn't have men screaming. The technical's gunner was reloading again, working the belt feed with practiced efficiency. Experienced, dangerous, exactly the kind of shooter who'd keep killing until someone stopped him. Her breathing slowed. 2 breaths. 1 breath. The pause between heartbeats. The moment crystallized wind, distance, angle, all the variables resolving into a single point of certainty. She exhaled halfway and held it. This wasn't about proving herself. Wasn't about gender or respect or any of the politics that had followed her through 3 years of service. This was about the fact that men were dying and she could stop it. Her finger moved to the trigger. Ellis, Chen whispered, we're counting on you. She knew. She'd always known. The rifle's report cracked through the night, distinctive even amid the chaos. Rachel's world reduced to the scope image, watching the bullet's flight in her mind's eye even though no human could actually track it. 280 meters. Flight time, less than half a second. The technical's gunner jerked backward, his arms spreading wide before he collapsed over the side of the truck bed. The machine gun went silent. For 3 seconds, the entire battlefield seemed to pause. Then Chen's voice. Holy shit! She got him. Confirm that kill, Lawson's voice snapped over the radio. Sector 4, is that technical neutralized? Rachel kept her eye to the scope, watching for secondary threats. Another figure emerged from behind the technical, reaching for the machine gun. She fired again. He dropped. 2 confirmed kills, she reported, her voice steady. Technical is neutralized. The tactical frequency erupted with new energy. 3. You've got breathing room. Get your wounded back. 2. Shift fire to the riverbed. Suppress those positions. The enemy force, suddenly without their supporting weapon, lost cohesion. The assault that had been methodically destroying the defensive line faltered as attackers realized their advantage had evaporated. Rachel's scope tracked across the battlefield, identifying targets with cold precision. Fire team leader, 230 meters, the one she'd wanted to shoot 20 minutes ago. He was gesturing frantically, trying to rally his forces. She centered the crosshairs. The rifle bucked. He went down. Jesus Christ. She's dropping them like tin cans. Someone breathed over the radio. Another target. Another shot. A spotter trying to direct mortar fire. 340 meters. Windage compensation required. She adjusted, breathed, fired. Who is that shooting? A voice she didn't recognize, probably from the reserve positions finally moving up. Sector 4, Holloway replied, his tone carrying something that might have been respect. The new girl. The new girl. 4 kills in 90 seconds. The enemy advance stalled completely. Combatants who'd been moving with confidence suddenly dove for cover, realizing they were being hunted by someone who didn't miss. Chen stared at her, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by something close to awe. Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that? Fort Benning, Sergeant. Like my file said. She didn't wait for his response, already scanning for new threats. The technical was done, but the enemy force still had numbers. They'd regroup, adapt, come at them from a different angle. And they did. Muzzle flashes erupted from a new position, the tree line at 475 meters. Someone smart had pulled back to a distance they assumed was safe from the defenders' weapons. They'd assumed wrong. Rachel adjusted her elevation, compensating for the longer range and the uphill angle. These weren't training targets. They were human beings, probably scared, definitely trying to kill her friends. She felt no hatred, no anger, just the cold calculation of geometry and physics. The first shot took out a machine gun team setting up in the tree line. The second stopped a squad leader rallying his forces. Sector 4 is clearing targets at 475 meters. Lawson reported to someone on a different frequency, probably battalion command. The enemy assault is breaking up. Breaking up, but not broken. There were still over 100 combatants out there, and Rachel had maybe 40 rounds of match-grade ammunition remaining. But the dynamic had shifted. The enemy had come expecting to overwhelm a weakened defensive position. Instead, they'd run into something they hadn't planned for. A shooter who turned their entire assault plan into a shooting gallery. Kowalski was laughing, the slightly manic laugh of someone who'd been terrified and suddenly wasn't. They're running. Look at them. They weren't running. They were repositioning, looking for angles that wouldn't expose them to Sector 4's overwatch. Rachel kept shooting. The enemy adapted faster than she'd hoped. At 0425 hours, 40 minutes into the engagement, they stopped trying to assault the main defensive positions. Instead, they did what Rachel would have done in their place. They went after the sniper. Mortar rounds started falling around Sector 4. Not accurate, but close enough. The first one hit 30 meters to their left, showering them with rock fragments. The second landed 15 meters right. "They're walking rounds onto us," Hayes shouted, diving deeper into cover. Chen grabbed his radio. "4 to Lawson. We're taking indirect fire. We need to displace." Negative. 4. "If you move, they'll break through your sector. Hold position." "Sir, they're going to drop one right on our heads." "Then get low and pray." The third mortar round hit 8 meters away. Rachel felt the concussion through her chest, her ears ringing despite the hearing protection. Dirt rained down, covering her rifle. She wiped the optic clean, never leaving her firing position. "Ellis, get down!" Chen yelled. "They want me down, Sergeant. That's the point." Another round. Closer. The next one would probably hit them directly, unless she took out the mortar team. She scanned the far ridge, looking for the telltale signature of a mortar position, the backblast, the angle of the tube, anything that would give away their location. There. A slight depression, 580 meters distant. She could see the top of the mortar tube, the crew moving around it. Extreme range for the M110, especially in darkness, but not impossible. The rifle cracked, 580 meters away. One of the mortar crew jerked and fell. The mortars stopped walking toward them and started falling randomly. The remaining crew disrupted by the sudden loss of their team leader. "Target eliminated," Rachel reported. "Mortar team, 580 meters. "I didn't even know we could shoot that far," Kowalski muttered. "Most people can't," Hayes said, looking at Rachel with new appreciation. But eliminating the mortar team just made the enemy try something else. They sent a flanking force, 30 combatants moving through dead ground along the dried riverbed, invisible to everyone except Sector 4. Rachel spotted them at 340 meters, using night vision to navigate terrain they thought protected them. Sector 4 to all positions. Enemy flanking force, 30+ personnel, moving through the riverbed towards Sector 1's rear. I can interdict. 4. This is 1. We don't see them. They're using the terrain, sir. But they'll emerge at grid. November, Victor, 6, 4 inches, approximately 3 minutes. If they reach that point, they'll be in your 6 o'clock. A pause. Then Holloway's voice. "Can you stop them, Corporal?" "I can slow them down, sir. But I'll need the rest of 4 to cover my flanks while I'm engaged." "Do it." Rachel shifted her position slightly, getting a better angle down into the riverbed. The flanking force was moving in a loose column, probably thinking they were safe in the shadows. She took the lead man, then the second, then skipped to the rear, taking out what looked like an officer. The formation scattered, taking cover among the rocks. But they'd lost their momentum, their surprise, their advantage. Contact. Contact in the riverbed. Someone shouted on the enemy frequency they'd learned to monitor it during earlier engagements. The flanking attack dissolved into chaos. Some tried to continue forward, exposing themselves to Rachel's field of fire. Others retreated, running into a machine gun burst from Sector 2 that had finally gotten a firing angle. Flanking forces neutralized, Rachel reported. Sector 1's rear is secure. Lawson's voice came back, less skeptical now. Outstanding work. 4. What's your ammunition status? Rachel checked. 18 rounds, sir. Make them count. She planned to. In the brief lull that followed the enemy regrouping, the defenders catching their breath, Rachel's hands moved automatically, reloading magazines while her mind drifted somewhere else. 6 years old. Her grandfather's farm in Montana. He'd been a Marine Scout sniper in Vietnam, though he never talked about it. Just took her out to shoot tin cans at ridiculous distances, teaching her to read wind and calculate holdovers before she could do long division. It's not about the gun, he'd said, his weathered hands guiding her small ones. It's about patience, about seeing what others miss. She'd loved those afternoons. Just her and Grandpa, no little brothers demanding attention, no teachers telling her to be quieter, more cooperative, less intense. Just targets and mathematics and the satisfaction of hitting what she aimed at. 14 years old, high school rifle team tryouts. Sorry, honey, but we've never had a girl on the team, Coach Patterson had said, not unkindly. It's just, the boys might not be comfortable with it. She'd won the state championship shooting independently the following year. 19 years old, Army recruiter's office. You sure you don't want to look at intelligence? Or maybe medical? We've got great programs for women in communications. I want infantry. Okay, but realistically, and I want sniper school. The recruiter had laughed, actually laughed, then saw her expression and stopped. She'd qualified expert on every weapons system they'd put in her hands, scored in the 98th percentile on the ASVAB, ran a 7-minute mile with full pack, did everything required and more. And still, the doubt followed her like a shadow. Not enough combat experience. Too young, too small, too female. Every obstacle was framed as concern for her safety, for the unit's cohesion, for maintaining standards. Never mind that she'd outshot men who'd been in the Army for a decade. Never mind that her scores were higher than half the sniper school instructors. Never mind that she'd done everything asked of her, and then some. The doubt persisted, until she got to the one place where doubt died. Downrange, where bullets were real and performance was measured in survival. A mortar round exploded somewhere to the north, jolting her back to the present. Chen was looking at her, his earlier hostility replaced by something more complicated. How long have you been shooting? Since I was 6, Sergeant. And they gave you shit at sniper school? Every single day. But you graduated. Top of my class, Sergeant. He shook his head. Then those instructors were idiots. She didn't respond. It didn't matter anymore. The opinions of instructors, the doubts of commanding officers, the assumptions of soldiers who couldn't imagine a woman looking through a scope, none of it mattered. What mattered was the sector she was protecting, the defensive line that was holding because she was making it hold. That was the only evaluation that counted. Incoming, Hayes shouted. Rachel returned to her scope, the past fading back into memory where it belonged. The present was what needed her attention. The present was trying to kill them. At 0517 hours, with dawn just beginning to paint the eastern ridge, the enemy committed everything they had left. 200 meters, 150 meters. They came in a human wave, using bodies to overwhelm defensive positions that couldn't possibly shoot fast enough to stop them all. All sectors, this is it. Lawson's voice was ragged. If they break through, we're done. Make every round count. Rachel's world became mechanical. Breathe, acquire, fire. Breathe, acquire, fire. She wasn't thinking about shots anymore, just executing them. Her hands and eyes working in perfect synchronization. Each trigger pull felt inevitable, like she was simply observing bullets that had already decided to fly. 11 rounds left. A cluster of enemy fighters was setting up a heavy machine gun at 200 meters, a position that would enfilade sectors 1 and 2 simultaneously. If that gun opened up, it would cut the defensive line in half. Machine gun team, 200 meters, center of the riverbed, she transmitted. Engaged, someone replied, but their fire was missing, kicking up dirt 10 meters short. Rachel's scope centered on the gunner. She fired. He dropped. The assistant gunner reached for the weapon. She fired again. 9 rounds. Gun is down, she reported. But 3 more fighters were dragging the machine gun away, trying to recover it. Smart. That weapon was worth risking lives for. She took the lead man, then the second. The third abandoned the gun and ran. 7 rounds. A new threat, a rocket-propelled grenade team setting up to hit Sector 2's bunker. The only hardened position they had left. Distance, 275 meters. The shooter was behind cover, but his partner, the man carrying the extra rockets, was partially exposed. Rachel had a decision to make. Shoot the exposed ammo bearer and hope the team withdrew, or wait for the shooter to expose himself and risk the RPG launching. She chose certainty over hope. The ammo bearer went down. The shooter hesitated, looking back at his fallen comrade, and in that moment of distraction, a burst from Sector 2's machine gun cut him down. 6 rounds. Then she saw him. The enemy commander. Had to be. Moving between positions, directing fire, organizing a final push against Sector 3's weakened position. He was hanging back at 520 meters, smart enough to stay out of the fight's immediate kill zone. Not smart enough to stay out of hers. She adjusted for the extreme range, the dawn wind, the angle. This was the shot that would define the engagement. If she took him down, the assault would lose coordination. If she missed, she'd wasted precious ammunition. Chen saw what she was targeting. That's too far. You'll never. She fired. 520 meters away, the enemy commander's chest exploded. He dropped instantly. And with him, the coherence of the assault. 4 rounds. Their commander is down, she reported. The enemy force wavered. Small unit leaders tried to maintain momentum, but the coordinated assault fractured into desperate, individual rushes. Sector 2's machine gun cut down a cluster of attackers. Sector 1's riflemen picked off stragglers. Hayes and Kowalski were firing steadily from their positions, no longer panicked, just grimly efficient. And Rachel kept shooting. 3 rounds. Her rifle clicked empty. She reached for a new magazine, but Chen stopped her. Save it, they're breaking. He was right. The enemy force was pulling back, dragging their wounded, abandoning equipment. The assault had failed. The defensive line had held. Cease fire, Lawson ordered. Cease fire. Let them go. Rachel lowered her rifle, her hands trembling now that the crisis had passed. They'd survived. Barely. The sun rose over a battlefield littered with spent brass and bloodstains. Smoke drifted across the valley, acrid and thick. Rachel sat with her back against the rock wall, cleaning her rifle with methodical precision despite the exhaustion weighing on every muscle. The weapon had saved their lives. It deserved proper care. Captain Lawson appeared at Sector 4's position, his uniform torn and dirty. He looked at Rachel for a long moment before speaking. "How many?" he asked. 17 confirmed kills, sir. Possibly more that I couldn't verify. 17. He shook his head. Against an assault force of 200, the terrain helped, sir, channelize their movement. The terrain I'm told you tried to warn us about yesterday. She didn't respond. Didn't need to. Lawson crouched beside her. I owe you an apology, Corporal. We didn't give you a fair chance. We saw, he paused. We saw what we expected to see, instead of what was actually there. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. I didn't need a fair chance. I just needed to do my job. He smiled faintly. That's exactly why you're a better soldier than most of us. He stood. Battalion wants a full after-action report. I'm recommending you for the Silver Star. That's not necessary, sir. It's not about necessary, Ellis. It's about right. He left, and Chen approached, carrying 2 bottles of water. He handed her one. I was wrong about you, he said simply. Yes, Sergeant, You were. Not going to make it easy on me? Would you, Sergeant? He laughed, a short bark of sound. No, I wouldn't. He sat down beside her. For what it's worth, I've been in the Army 23 years. I've served with a lot of snipers. You're better than most of them. Thank you, Sergeant. That technical shot, the mortar team, the commander at 520 meters. He shook his head. That wasn't luck. That was skill. It was math, she corrected. Just math. Medical evacuation helicopters thundered overhead, heading for sectors 2 and 3, where the casualties were concentrated. Rachel watched them, thinking about the men who hadn't made it, the ones who died in the first minutes, before she'd been allowed to shoot. Could she have saved them if Chen had let her fire immediately? Probably not all of them, but maybe some. The weight of that possibility settled on her shoulders, not crushing but present. A reminder that in combat, hesitation killed just as surely as enemy bullets. Kowalski approached, looking suddenly shy. Hey, Corporal? Yeah? I was wondering if, when we get back, could you maybe teach me some of that? The long-range shooting? She looked at him, this baby-faced kid who'd watched her work and seen something worth learning. Sure, Kowalski, I can do that. Hayes walked over, his usual silence broken by 3 words. You saved us. We saved each other, she replied. But she knew the truth. They'd all held the line, but only one of them had made sure there was still a line to hold. 3 days later, at battalion headquarters, Rachel sat through the formal debrief. Officers who'd never seen combat asked questions about shot placement, ammunition expenditure, rules of engagement. She answered precisely, clinically, giving them the metrics they wanted without the emotional context they couldn't understand. When it was done, Lieutenant Holloway caught her in the hallway. I was your biggest doubter, he said. Thought you'd be a liability. I know, sir. For what it's worth, I was wrong. And I'm sorry. Apology accepted, sir. He started to leave, then turned back. That shot on the commander, 520 meters, in dawn wind, uphill angle. That's a shot I wouldn't have taken. Why not, sir? Because I didn't think I could make it. That's the difference between us. Then, I knew I could. He smiled. Yeah, that's the difference. Outside, she found Sergeant Chen smoking a cigarette, a habit he'd supposedly quit years ago. They're cutting orders, he said. Putting you in for advanced reconnaissance training. Probably assign you to a special operations unit after that. I just want to do my job, Sergeant. Your job is wherever they need the best. And Ellis? He looked at her directly. You're the best. She nodded once, accepting the assessment without false modesty or pride. It was simply a fact, proven in the only laboratory that mattered. A young private approached, nervous. Corporal Ellis? I'm supposed to report to sniper school next month. I heard what you did. I was wondering if you had any advice? She considered the question, thinking about her grandfather's farm, about endless practice sessions, about every doubting voice she'd overcome. Don't let anyone tell you what you can't do, she said finally. Let the target tell you. If you can hit it, you can hit it. Everything else is just noise. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. He hurried away, and Rachel returned to her barracks to pack her gear. Her rifle lay on the bed, freshly cleaned, ready for whatever came next. She thought about the radio transmission from 3 days ago. Just a girl, someone had said, the words dripping with contempt. Just a girl. She picked up her rifle, feeling its familiar weight. Just a girl who'd held a defensive line against 200 attackers. Just a girl who'd made 17 confirmed kills in one engagement. Just a girl who'd proven that the only thing that mattered downrange was whether you could shoot. The doubt would follow her to the next assignment, and the next, and the next. Let it. She'd proven herself once. She could do it again, and again, and again, until the day no one asked her gender before asking how many targets she could hit. Until the day just a girl became just the best. She slung her rifle over her shoulder and walked toward whatever came next. Ready,